Hi, my name is Nicole Steller. I'm an assistant professor at ESCP and I'm very much looking forward to collaborate with you on your master thesis. I have a lot of experience consulting students in terms of their master thesis. Please allow me for a couple of minutes to elaborate a little bit on the idea behind why we all write a master thesis. So generally, always research starts from a practical problem. So we go into the world, observe, and find a problem which irritates us. So we becoming curious and want to figure out what's behind this problem, why something happens in a certain way. And exactly then you start becoming interested. So this is then already a good idea for digging deeper. But to master a thesis in an academic environment, you need also a theoretical discussion going on exactly on this problem. So just imagine we do research as I do about purpose and organizations. So there's a huge gap between organizations willing to become sustainable and very purpose-oriented, and on the other side, acting because of shareholders' demands. And exactly this is the real problem. But behind that, we have a huge discussion going on in the academic discourse about researchers arguing that actually the shareholders might be more relevant than maybe the complexity of shareholders' requests. For example, this is then the theoretical grounding of doing research for the practical problem to solve this practical problem. It's a different kind of way of thinking. So what I ask you to do is first, go into the world, find something what interests you. So it should be something what you can identify with, a problem what resonates with you, and then look up some theoretical discussions actually talking about that. Which group is arguing for what position, or what are they discussing? So you want to go on Google Scholar, type in your topic and find similar papers, similar books talking exactly on what you're thinking of. So that's step number one. Step number two is you start to think and elaborate on the way of answering this research question. And then we separate, either it's a quantitative study or it's a qualitative study. I don't recommend you to combine both. A mixed study is very complex and you're doing something in both areas, and it's not good as it could be if you just focus on one method approach. So focus on qual or quant. I'm a qualitative researcher, so normally I do a lot of interviews, and this method is all about exploring something. So you want to have a rough idea, but it's not that you have a hypothesis in mind which you want to prove either or the effect is bigger or very small. So you want to first, from a qualitative perspective, explore and get some ideas. Be very open-minded to what can the practitioners tell you, so that you learn and you expand the current knowledge in research. So that's qual. Quantitative research, you start with a very clear understanding and assumption of what the result could be, and then you are more testing it. It's a different approach. You need to prepare it in a different way. So quantitative studies needs to be well prepared in advance, because when you have collected the data, you cannot go back and redo it again. Where you do qualitative interviews, you always can, after one interview to the other, slightly change the narrative or the problematization. So it's more open. You're more agile in the way you're working throughout the thesis. So two main methods. I'm willing to supervise both. And then if you have figured out which method you want to do, then of course you can use ChatGPT to plan a little bit how you want to go through, collect the data, how you want to analyze it. But it's very important, and that's actually the mastery of doing the thesis, is that you always make it coherent. So the practical problem, the theoretical discussion, the research design, and the way you analyze that, it all needs to be in line. And this is the mastery of that. So in the end, we are going to evaluate your thesis in terms of How well were you able to exactly ground your problem, open up the discussion, the theoretical discussion, formulate a clear research question, collect data, analyze data, and answer the question. So it's an entire line throughout the thesis of many pages. And you want to make sure that it's coherent and concise. So we are not evaluating each sentence or each reference. It's rather this way of asking a question and finding a way to solve this problem and answer the question. So if you have an idea how you want to build up this study, then you're already one step ahead, and you can provide me more information exactly about that, so that I give you feedback, that we make this picture clearer, and that you become more confident in talking about that. And the way you talk about that in a very simple way makes the entire research project easier to execute. I would suggest you, if you have this research design planned, then you start already with the introduction. The introduction chapter is very important because it's actually the skeleton of your entire thesis. So in the end, you need, of course, go back and revise it and make it coherent. Send it to me and I will provide you feedback. You can then move on to the theoretical background, the literature review, and provide the reader some information, what is generally known about this phenomenon. This would be an entire subchapter of your literature review. Then the chapter 3 is always the methodological approach. So there you're going to present basically the research design. Then you start always with the data collection. What are you collecting? The sample, the data analysis. So we want to understand step by step, what have you done? So all your decisions about how you're going to solve this problem and the research question should be part of this method chapter. And if you use ChatGPT for that, it's definitely not enough. So you need to really make a protocol throughout the process of deciding on certain things. Like, why have you, for example, asked exactly those 10 people of this one company? Why haven't you went to any company and asked any employee to answer all your questions? So it's a matter of decision and making it super concrete. So I'm interested in all your reasoning behind each decision. And if you want to make it even more convincing, you can say, of course, I had the chance to choose between this method or those 8 people or those 10 people, but I decided because of X, Y, Z. When you're going to analyze the data, it's very important that you become familiar to the data. So it's all about getting an idea what the data tells you. So of course you can somehow use AI to analyze that, but it will be superficial. So generally when I have an interview and I would ask ChatGPT, what does this interview tells me, it would just provide me general topics, but I need details. I need really the way of people talking to me, the emotions they put in the sentence. Also how those people construct their arguments. For example, if somebody says, I like this leader, he has been horrible because of blah, 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 blah. Then this contrast of leader, horrible, the terms the person used can be very powerful for getting an idea what really is behind those terms. So it's an interpretational task. You need to read the interview transcripts as well. When you do quantitative methods, then it's relevant that you also read the answers, go really deep, and then zoom out. So that's all about zooming in, zooming out, zooming in and zooming out. And you will get completely confused and lost and like when I have 70 interviews, for example, it's really challenging. It's actually horrible because this process just is frustrating. You do not have a clear idea what is behind, like what is the pattern. But when I read many interviews, I go back home or talk to my family and friends. And when I tell them what I've read about, those ideas which stood out, those are probably some of those findings. So in the end of the data analysis, you want to have 5 main findings, 5 main takeaways you have gotten after having a question in mind which tackles a real problem in the world, then doing all this data collection thing and then analyzing it, And then you ask yourself, what have I actually learned? What is something new, what you haven't known before? And exactly those are the main findings. So when you have that, like those 5 statements maybe written down, those are already like your sub-themes for the results section. And then you use always a scheme of dropping or naming, emphasizing this one statement, the one finding, then you explain it, then you provide us evidence, and then you interpret it. So it's always this kind of circle. So each paragraph of your findings, or like each finding in itself, should be always structured like that. And then you already have done a lot, and we are close to the discussion section, which is actually the heart of this entire thesis. So some professors, they even just check the introduction and then they go straight away to the discussion, because then you see actually the 2 parts, they should be aligned, they should be talk to each other. The introduction is an overview, positioning the entire thesis with the research question, and the discussion. In that discussion, the findings will be somehow put in the context of literature, of what prior research has said, what we currently know. And then you ask yourself, what do I contribute to that discussion? Is it that I expand the results of prior research, or is it that I have counterintuitive results? Do you have contrast to offer, or is it rather all similar to what prior research has said? In the best way, you would have something novel and not a repetition of our other findings. This would be super boring. Sometimes we have with those quantitative studies, we have no significant effects, and then we cannot say anything particularly relevant, what revolutionizes prior research. But sometimes, and especially in qualitative research, you always have something to offer, like some granular details which contribute to something. So you want to contribute to prior research. That is a contribution of your thesis. Of course, you can have practical implications, which are very relevant. Also for us being at a business school, this is very relevant. But on the other side, it doesn't make a thesis academically reasonable. So therefore, you need to ground it in prior research and make it theoretically sound. And then the last part of the thesis would be always about the limitations. Of course, like asking 100 people is not enough. We would need to do bigger studies. Or you could say, yeah, I've talked to, I don't know, leaders of middle-sized companies. And to generalize those results, the findings, we need to ask people from large or small companies. You mention the limitations of your study, something what you could not take care of, and then at the same time you offer future research. It's a way of arguing why you have done certain things or could not take care of something else which you had in consideration, but of course due to time and the contextual factors we are not able to run, for example, a quantitative study across the world. It will be always somehow limited, and this way we as researchers make sure that we consider those factors, but we also help each other to offer future research so that other people can build on our results. And then in the end, we need a conclusion, a very precise, concise conclusion, which somehow summarizes everything what you found out. So it normally starts with a restatement of the objective of the thesis. In this thesis or this study has focused on this XYZ question, and after conducting a quantitative study and asking 300 students what they think about blah 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 blah, we have figured out XYZ. Given those results, we draw or we contribute to XYZ, or I contribute to XYZ. And then you're done. You need a reference list, and I recommend you to always use research papers and like HBR articles, for example. This gray area book chapters are also fine, but not only blog articles or any websites. This is not enough. So make sure it's backed up with other findings and research. And then you can also put like an appendix which provides tables or further information to provide evidence. That's it. So You see, it's an entire process you work through. And the most important thing is you need to establish a routine of feedback loops. Like really use me as a recipient, write something, scribble something down, send it to me, get feedback. You need those loops, otherwise you will be stuck and wait for something to happen, but nothing will happen with this thesis unless you become active. And that's the main, actually, I would say, productivity hack I became aware of. And that's why I could finish also my PhD in 3 years and produce some amount of research findings and papers. So let me know if you have any questions. And of course, this process is always customizable. On the other hand, trust me, I have done so many theses, and it's all about getting through this process. The earlier, the better. It's a clear goal you have. You need to get it done, get through this process, and it takes time. So when you are planning to do that in the last 3 weeks, the quality will be obviously not as good as if you would invest more time. And there, like, the brain processes information, and therefore, you develop also ideas, you develop standing towards certain findings, and then it becomes, interesting. And I hope you become also an expert in your topic. And it's so relevant because also in a practical context, when you work then in organizations, they will always ask you, what was your thesis about? Or if there is a topic on the agenda of the company, and it's perhaps something you associate with your thesis, you always can argue that you have done your thesis on this topic. For example, I've done my master thesis on performance management systems and the holistic perspective on those. And it's something I'm doing my research on, although it's not in my main area. I hope it's not useless and like a waste of time, but rather that you use it as a chance to become an expert in a certain topic. And I remember what helped me also was, in the beginning, I imagined that someone asked me after I've done this entire thesis project if I could write like a little newspaper article about my finding. And I wrote my thesis, for example, on startup hype. So if someone would ask me, what is your statement on startup hype in Germany? And so feel free to reach out anytime you wanna talk, you wanna have feedback, or you wanna double check. I will supervise you to guide you through this entire process so that it's like a pleasure, not just only a hustle or even a stress project. So let me know how I can be of help for you, and see you soon.